Part two of how the narcissist rewires your mind. Entrainment. When your nervous system becomes theirs, you didn't just fall in love, your entire body was hijacked. Entrainment is the syncing of rhythms, heartbeats, breaths, emotional states. It happens naturally in safe, loving relationships, but in narcissistic ones, it becomes a trap. Their moods override yours, their rage becomes your shame, their silence becomes your panic. This bidirectional regulation was once meant to help infants attune to their caregivers. Now it's used against you. You stop trusting yourself. You wait for cues. You anticipate their needs before your own. And slowly you disappear, regulated by someone who was never stable to begin with. The ideal object fantasy. Why you became their perfect mirror. Every narcissist is chasing one thing: the ideal object, the perfect all-giving source of validation. In Melanie Klein's theory, the infant splits the mother into good and bad objects. They internalize a good mother fantasy, forgiving, nurturing, admiring, and spend life seeking her externally. You became that fantasy. By mirroring their grandiosity and soothing their wounds, you temporarily filled the hole, but you were never allowed to be real. Your pain disrupted the fantasy, your autonomy threatened the bond, and once you showed imperfection, you were split, devalued, and discarded. This is not your failure, it's the inevitable shattering of an illusion you were never meant to hold. Colonization completion point. The moment you fully inhabit their inner world. There is a moment, subtle but devastating, when you become them. You begin speaking like them, thinking like them, feeling their shame, their rage, their despair. This is the colonization completion point, the full psychic merger between your reality and their internal world. You are no longer reacting to them, you are reacting from within them. This is why leaving hurts so much. You're not just leaving a person, you're breaking a psychic contract. And only by recognizing this moment, this fusion, can you begin the painful but necessary return to yourself. The narcissistic collapse. When the mask cracks inside them and you think you've been discarded, but really they're imploding. The narcissist cannot tolerate rejection or imperfection. It ruptures the fragile structure of their false self. This triggers collapse, a state of emptiness, panic, or rage. They cycle rapidly, discarding, idealizing, devaluing. You became a prop in their internal war. But you collapse too, slowly, invisibly. Your ego structure splits. You internalize their mother, their criticism, their chaos. You begin to speak in their voice, think their thoughts, hate yourself within their hatred. This is mirrored psychic inversion, and until it's reversed, the collapse continues, even long after they're gone. Psychic orphanhood. When you realize they're not coming back, there's grief, and then there is this. Psychic orphanhood is the existential loneliness that follows narcissistic collapse. You didn't just lose a partner, you lost an illusion of safety, of love, of being known. And worse, you lost parts of yourself you handed over: your voice, your joy, your center. This grief is not just sadness, it's dislocation. But it's in this emptiness lies rebirth. For what is an orphan can be adopted by your own self. And from that reclamation comes not survival, but transformation. The psychic conversion point, when you finally discard the narcissist from within. You thought they discarded you, but real freedom comes when you discard the internalized narcissist. This is the psychic conversion point, the moment you realize the voice that haunts you isn't yours. The self-hatred, the doubt, the perfectionism, it's their introject, not your truth. Recovery begins here, not with revenge, not with closure, but with reclaiming your inner world. You begin to speak kindly to yourself, to grieve what you gave, to rewrite your worth. And when the internal abuser no longer gets a voice, the healing isn't just intellectual, it's cellular. Trauma bonding. Why was it so hard to leave, and why you still miss them? You weren't just in love, you were neurologically fused. Trauma bonding occurs when abuse is paired with intermittent reward. The same system that regulates your sense of safety was triggered to depend on them. Each moment of tenderness rewired your pain. Each rage episode left you craving resolution. Your brain began to associate relief with their return. Even now you miss them, not because of who they were, but because of the chemical bond, the dopamine, oxytocin, and cortisol, all trained to spike in their presence. This isn't love, it's survival. And the antidote isn't time, it's awareness and reprogramming your nervous system to stop confusing danger with connection. Libidinal and anti-libidinal splitting. How you became both loved and hated. You weren't just idealized, you were split. Fairbairn's object relations theory describes the ego splitting into libidinal, which is hopeful and loving, and anti-libidinal, which is resentful and punishing parts. Narcissist recreates this split in you. They love you for who you could be and hate you for not staying that way. They adore your light, they punish your needs, they praise your devotion, and then mock your boundaries. You become both angel and enemy, savior and saboteur, and this internal war mirrors their own. You are not just a partner, you are a projection screen for a fractured self. Projective identification, the narcissist's number one tool. They don't just project it, they make you become what they hate. This is projective identification, a term coined by Melanie Klein. It describes a process of inserting one's unwanted feelings into another person. But the narcissist doesn't stop there. They provoke you to act them out. You become the angry one, the unstable one, the needy one. And at that point, they point to you and say, "See, I told you so." Meanwhile, they remain calm, innocent, superior. It is not a tactic, it's a defense, a system of self protection so deep even they believe it. But over time, you start doubting your sanity. Their inner world becomes your outer chaos, and unless you recognize the game, you'll keep playing it until you forget who you were before it started. Narrative smearing. How they rewrite your story to protect the fantasy. When the fantasy breaks, they rewrite history. Smear campaigns are not revenge, they're regulation. Way for the narcissist to reassert control and restore their grandiosity. They project the persecutory interject onto you, accusing you of what they fear most in themselves. They reframe your love as manipulation, your concern as madness, your truth as abuse. And worst of all, others believe it because the narcissist is convincing, charming, concerned. But this is not about facts, it's about narrative ownership. And as long as they own the story, they own your reputation and your silence. Infantile ego defenses. How your childhood made you vulnerable to this fantasy. You weren't weak, you were trained. From infancy, we develop ego defenses to protect against pain, splitting, projection, denial. Those are normal developmental tools. From infancy, we develop ego defenses against pain. But when childhood was filled with emotional neglect or enmeshment, these defenses become permanent, become primed to abandon yourself, to merge with others, to survive through idealization. The narcissist fits perfectly into this schema. They recreate the parent you couldn't please, the love you had to earn, and the self you had to hide. You weren't chosen because you were weak, but because your strengths were accessible, malleable, and willing to contort into devotion. Healing begins when the mirror ends. The journey after the narcissistic abuse, there is no tidy ending, no perfect closure. Healing is messy but sacred. Melanie Klein wrote, "The omnipotent denial of the bad object must give way to mourning. This is the true task, to integrate the good and the bad in them and in you. You grieve the fantasy, the person you thought to love, the self you thought you lost, and with every tear, a little bit of more of you returns." Peace out.